Hi, I'm Cihat Gündüz. I'm the developer of RemafoX, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can add new translations to your project easily, and I will also talk about available options and best practices for naming translation keys. First, make sure you have set up your project and you integrated RemafoX with Xcode. Watch the two videos before to see how to do that, or visit 2.remafox.app/project-setup. If everything's ready, you can now open your project in Xcode and start coding. For example, let's add a new SwiftUI text view in this screen as a label for a progress counter. Let's start by writing a plain literal string in the development language. The fastest way to localize a text using RemafoX is to mark the full string and use the shortcut. In my case, it's Option Command L, but you can also use the editor menu using your mouse. If you can't find this entry, make sure you have enabled the RemafoX source editor extension. If you can't find it, but the submenu entry is disabled, restarting Xcode should fix it. Common questions like these are also answered in the FAQs under 2.remafox.app/FAQ. In the Add Translation window, note that the text we marked is set as the source translation. The fast way to add a new translation is to fill out the translation key and machine translate. For example, let's call the key onboarding.progress.label and enter Command M or press here. This will start a machine translation of our source text to all other languages in the project. If we now press Insert as String or use the shortcut Command Enter, we are already done. RemafoX has added all the different translations to the related strings files automatically. And it brought us back to the Swift file with the localized reference in place of the string literal. This is the simplest case of adding a new translation. Let's explore the workflow in more detail. The label alone is incomplete, so let's add another text view for the progress value. Now we mark the text and open the Add Translation window using the shortcut Option Command L. It's important to note that at the top of the window, you can select the project and strings file. If you work on multiple projects supporting RemafoX, check that the right project is selected. RemafoX will always pre-select the last used project and strings file for nice continued usage. Right below the translation key text field, you can find a cheat sheet for your convenience. Let's make use of it with an advanced example this time, which uses all RemafoX features. Before we get to that, let's talk some key naming best practices first. In RemafoX, the recommended style for keys is to follow the type naming conventions in Swift. While other formats are also supported, for the best experience, use upper camel casing. Like types in Swift, which can be nested and called with a dot separator, as in array.element, you can also group parts of your app by using the same dot syntax, as in onboarding.progress. From my experience, a three-part grouping of translation keys works really well. For example, the first part could represent the module or screen the translation relates to. The second part could represent the section or component the translation relates to. And the third part would describe the detailed intent of the text within the scope. For this example, we could choose onboarding.progress.current value. This convention ensures that related keys in strings files are closer to each other thanks to sorting. But we're not done with the key because two parameters are passed in the source translation. RemafoX supports named parameters. The syntax again is inspired by Swift, initializers this time. A Swift initializer could read onboarding.progress.current value current int total int. RemafoX uses the same syntax, but replaces the types with the specifiers in the cheat sheet. Replacing int with %d leads to the final key, onboarding.progress.currentValue, current %d, total %d. Because the same type int appears here twice, it's a good idea to enumerate them for clarity. The cheat sheet tells us that we can do this by adding $1 and $2 between the % and the d. This numeration allows switching the order of parameters, which is needed in some languages. The resulting key is onboarding.progress.currentValue, current %$1d, total $2d. Always refer to the examples on the right of the cheat sheet if you forget the right syntax. The key is ready now. The next field, translation comment, can be used for additional context. I like to leave this field empty because our multi-part key should already clarify the context. Let's continue to the translation fields. On a paid plan, you'll see that the bottom part changed to pluralized text automatically. This has happened because RemafoX detected a number parameter in the key. If we were counting some kind of object here, this would come in very handy. We could provide different translations for different cases, like 1 user, 2 users. If you scroll down, you'll see that only the plural cases relevant for each language are shown. Additionally, if we provided both cases for the source language, we could machine translate. The machine translation in RemafoX is fully aware of pluralization and properly maps cases. But in our text, there is no object to be counted, so let's switch back to simple text mode. First, we need to replace the interpolated string with the right parameters, %$1d and %2d. Next, because I happen to speak German, I'm going to provide the German translation myself. To ensure that my provided value is not overridden by machine translation, I lock it. Now, for all other languages, I use machine translation by pressing this button or Command M. Sometimes you might have a typo in the source language leading to wrong translations. If that happens, you can simply re-trigger the translation one more time. Sometimes this can be also useful if you find that a few translations are longer than fits your UI. Then simply log all languages that fit lengthwise, change the source, and retranslate again. Once you are happy with all translations, you are given two options to insert them into Swift. Insert as string and insert as localized string key. Pressing the first will always work and is the one you should choose if you're unsure. The second option will only work in some SwiftUI views like text or a button. The only advantage of using a localized string key, as far as I know, lies in SwiftUI previews. You can create multiple previews of one view to see it in different languages side by side. If you do this, the previews will only translate if you're using a localized string key. If you don't use the SwiftUI feature, for example because you're still on UIKit, you can always insert as string. After insertion, you'll see that a call with named and typed parameters was added to our code. We even have jump markers for the parameters we can easily tap through. Let's assign our values here and we're done. Note that you can change the .string to .locStringKey anytime later if you need to. Alright, this video was packed with information, so let's summarize what we've learned. In this video, we learned how to start the add translation workflow and fix some common starting issues. We learned how to quickly add a new translation by providing the key and machine translating. We learned the best practice on the naming convention for translation keys. We learned how to pass named and even enumerated parameters to translations. We learned what pluralization is and how RemafoX makes it way easier. And we learned the difference between insert as string and insert as localized string key. If you come across any issues or have questions, make sure to report them in the app's help menu. Thank you for watching.